Year 10 Cumulative Frequency Graphs. We're going to start off by introducing the concept of cumulative frequency, and I want you to have a look at the table below. It shows data from a test taken by 100 students and the frequency of students in each scoring group. We'll assume the test result is recorded as a percentage score. And we can see, for instance, there are 8 students who scored between 0 and 20%, not including 20% itself. Now, we're going to now calculate the cumulative frequency. This is a running total of the frequencies. So, for instance, here the first cumulative frequency is 8, because we are only looking at the 8 students who scored between 0 and 20%. The second cumulative frequency is 8 plus 15, which is 23. Now, this 23 represents all of these students, so it represents everybody who scored between 0 and 40%. The next cumulative frequency is 23, the previous cumulative frequency, plus 30, which comes to 53. And this 53 represents the total of these 3 frequencies, i.e. it's everybody who scored anywhere between 0 and 60%. And we keep calculating cumulative frequencies in the same way. So the next cumulative frequency is 53 plus 24, which is this next frequency here, which comes to 77. And this represents the total of these 4 frequencies. So it's everybody who scored between 0 and 80%, not including 80%, of course. And then the last cumulative frequency is 77 plus 23, which comes to 100, which I'm just going to fill in at the bottom again. There, 100. Now that, of course, represents everybody. It's the total of all the frequencies, and it represents all of the people who scored between 0 and 100%. So that's how we calculate cumulative frequency. It's very easy to do so. Now what's interesting is we can use our cumulative frequencies to then plot a cumulative frequency graph. On the x-axis, we've got the score achieved, and on the y-axis, we've got the cumulative frequency. Now, how do we plot this graph? Well, we start by thinking of the first cumulative frequency, 8. Now, this represents all of the people who scored up to 20%. So I am going to plot the score of 20% on the x-axis against a cumulative frequency of 8, like this. I'm going to have to estimate a little bit with my plotting, but there we go. The next cumulative frequency is 23. Now this corresponds to all of the people who scored up to 40%. So my next point is plotted at 40%, and it refers to 23 people, the 23 people who scored below 40%. The next cumulative frequency is 53, and I'm going to plot that against a test result of 60 because these 53 people scored below 60%. So there's 60, there's 53, it's going to be approximately here. So 60% and 53, there we go. Now, the next cumulative frequency is 77. Now, these 77 people scored below 80%, so I want to plot 80% versus the 77 people, like so. And then finally, we have the full 100 people who scored 100% or below. So 100 matches up with 100 there, the top. Now, we can then draw a smooth curve through the points, or we can join the points up with straight lines. Either is fine. Now, the graph will begin at the start of the very first group, which is 0. It may not always be 0, so be careful, because sometimes you may need to track back to a different point if the data doesn't start at 0. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to join the points up point to point with a straight line, which we are allowed to do for a cumulative frequency graph. So here we have the completed graph. it is crucial, absolutely crucial, that you remember that the cumulative frequencies, these values here, are plotted at the upper limit of each group, i.e. these values here, not at the middle of each group or the midpoint of each group. And this is something that people often get wrong, so please be careful when you're plotting a cumulative frequency graph and make sure that you remember this key piece of information here. So here is a computer generated version of our cumulative frequency graph. We're going to do the following using our graph. So first of all, we're going to estimate the median and the quartiles and then calculate the interquartile range. So the median will be our middle value. So if we think about the fact that there were 100 people involved in this, we need to find a cumulative frequency of 50, and we need to draw on a line like this. Please make sure you use a ruler, and please draw this line on when you're answering one of these questions. You mustn't just try and guess by eye. Draw on the line with a ruler and then use the scales. And also drawing on the lines shows that you have done the necessary working. So we can see that the median is going to be probably about 57, maybe 58, around about that approximately. We're estimating, remember, because we're using the graph. So the median score is going to be about 57. Now, my lower quartile, again, because there were 100 items of data, it's quite easy. I can find my 25th value, go along to the graph, go down like that, and again, I've got to estimate a little bit, but I think the lower quartile is going to be about 42. Now, my upper quartile, so we need to go 3/4 of the way through the total frequency, which is 75. So here we go. And then from there down to the x-axis, like so, and then we can read off our lower quartile, which again is probably about 77, 70, 78, around about that sort of value. So our interquartile range is our upper quartile, subtract our lower quartile, which is equal to 77, subtract 42, which equals 35. Now, we're going to draw a box plot using our answers to the first part of the question. So you can see there's a little bit of graph paper underneath the cumulative frequency graph in which we're going to fit our box plot. Now let's start with the median. We know that that is over here, so just vertically below where the median is, I'm going to draw in my vertical line, which I think I have to move just to position carefully. Now my upper quartile was about 77, so vertically in line with the upper quartile, I'm going to draw in a vertical line there using a ruler, and the same with my lower quartile there. Now, I can then join up those points to create the box part of the box and whisker plot. There we go. And the same underneath. There we have it. And I now need to draw on my whiskers. So the whiskers will have to go out to the most extreme data items, but we don't know what these are because the data was grouped. All I know is that the first group started at 0 and the last group ended at 100. So what I'm going to do is draw out a line like that which takes me all the way to 100, and another line like that which takes me all the way back to 0. Please make sure you have used a ruler to do this. Okay, and let's just draw on our whiskers. At the end, I'll do these in a colour because otherwise you may not be able to see them because of the colour of the axis there. So there we have our box and whisker plot. As I said, please make sure you use a ruler to do this. Now, we're going to estimate the number of students who score 45% or less using our cumulative frequency graph. So I'm very simply going to find a score of 45%, which is here. And this time I'm going to go up to the graph and across to the cumulative frequency like that, and it comes to 30 students. So that's approximately 30 students who score 45% or less. Now we want to estimate the number of students who score 85% or more. Again, using the graph, I'm going to find 85% on the x-axis where the score is, and I'm going to very carefully, and again with a ruler, track my way up to the graph, and then track my way across again using a ruler and drawing this onto my graph to show my working. I'm going to go across horizontally like that, which takes me to a value of about 82, maybe 83 students. Now, that's 83 students who scored less than 85%. Remember, I wanted to look at the students who scored more than 85%. So in reality, I am looking at these students up here. So to actually give the correct answer to this question, it's not 83. 83 refers to all the students who scored below 85%. So to answer the question, we want this yellow portion of students here, which is 100 take away 83, which comes to 17 students. And that's the answer to our question.